Greetings, and what I'd like to do in this video is to spend a little bit of time adding to the discussion on Chapter 6 on social structure by presenting the research of Linsky, Bachman, and Strauss from their book Stress, Culture, and Aggression, where they have created the State Stress Index based on the anomie theory. And what they have done here is created 15, or I'm sorry, they didn't create, but what they have created is an index, but they use 15 variables that are readily available, for example, from government organizations and agencies such as the Census Bureau, and they have constructed the State Stress Index, which has 5 economic stressors, 5 family stressors, and 5 community stressors. And the economic stressors that they include are business failures, unemployment rates, striking worker rates, bankruptcy cases, and mortgage foreclosure rates. The family stressors are divorce rates, abortion rates, illegitimate birth rates, infant deaths, and fetal death rates. And the community stressors are disasters assistance, percent residing in the state less than 5 years, new housing units, new welfare recipients, and high school dropout rates. Basically, they're using rates or percentages. They're using numbers where you can compare state to state. So if you're comparing, for example, Florida to Delaware, obviously there's a lot more people in Florida. They go ahead and they use a rate, for example, per 100,000, or they use a percentage, 75%, 20%, whatever. So you can actually compare, and you're taking the population into consideration so you can make this comparison appropriately. They looked at the whole idea that stress, strain, and frustration occurs when the aspirations and goals that society has set up for people basically cannot be realized or are blocked. Basically, we talked about this before when we talked about Merton's anomie and strain theory and Durkheim's presentation of the concept of anomie. The idea here is the greater the amount of stress, the greater the amount of deviant behavior and criminal behavior. In essence, the more stressful the social environment of the state, the higher the rate of several types of violent crime. And they found that there was significant relationships between high levels of stress as measured on that 15 variable state stress index and smoking and alcohol abuse, suicide, homicide, and rape. So the higher the stress levels in the state, the higher the rates of smoking and tobacco abuse, suicide, homicide, and rape. They also found that culture may channel aggression in a way where, for example, higher rates of favorable views toward alcohol use were related to aggression, and so were higher rates of legitimate violence, such as capital punishment, the death penalty, or corporal punishment, spanking kids in the school system, for example. And also family violence was related to higher rates of alcohol consumption and legitimate violence. So they begin to develop a model where they look at how these different aspects interact and relate to increased violence. So there you have looking at smoking and tobacco abuse, suicide, homicide, and rape, internalized and externalized violence, if you will. What they come up with, interestingly enough, and that's something really we haven't discussed, but I want you to keep thinking about policy implications of each of these theories. In other words, what can we do? I mean, why would you take a course on theory if you weren't thinking about how you could apply it to reduce crime? That would make sense, or else we'd just be all walking around in high crime, societies just chatting about theory. So we want to think about, well, how will we make that make sense and translate that into some policies, some things we actually do? And so some of the policy implications, and I already know you're going to say, whoa, 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 that's very costly to do. And I would say, yes, some of these are more costly than others, but you also want to try to figure out by conducting more research where you'll get the most benefit or positive effects from the least amount of funds or money. But these are some of the ideas, and so I want you to think about how these might help or work. First, to reduce work stoppages and also to reduce mortgage foreclosures. Okay, so the banks and the economic system certainly are involved in this. Also to try to reduce the school dropout rates, and there we have to deal with the educational issues and how dropout rates are related to higher crime, which is of course related to lack of supervision of youth, and also lack of skills for legitimate jobs and occupations leading to income. And also we'd want to focus on health, better health care to reduce infant mortality, and on also the rate of stillbirth. So we'd want to have better prenatal care, obviously. And then we could use the state stress index to evaluate if policies work by looking at those variables over time, or testing out certain programs in some states and using other states as control states, and seeing if there's any changes. Also, we can use this maybe to intervene in high-risk areas, to focus our attention. Where might we want to spend more time and effort with interventions that have been scientifically shown to reduce specific types of criminal activities. Also, we might want to focus on teaching nonviolent techniques to deal with conflicts, and providing adequate welfare support and adequate educational support. In addition, increasing community integration, increasing the availability of medical and mental health services, although we need to look at the social costs and long-term benefits. Okay, this particular issue, you might say, whoa, whoa, this is kind of bizarre. You'd present this during a major political election. And my response would be, no, I've been presenting this for years and years and years. It just happens to be political election going on. And you might say, well, there's a liberal or conservative bias here. And I would say that there may be in some ways, but for the most part, I believe this is relatively bias free of any major political agenda. We're just trying to look at ways using the particular social structural approach. And what's interesting about this is that the structural theory, especially structural functionalism and anomy theory, tends to be more conservative than some of the more liberal-oriented theories in that sense. So I think you have a mix here in that regard. Anyway, I don't want to bring politics into this. I'd like to avoid that. I'm basically just saying, hey, here's a really great study, and here are the findings and some of the implications. Maybe you can come up with other ones as well, what to do with this data. And think about that. Anyway, to give you the reference, it's Linsky, Bachman, and Strauss, published in 1995, Stress, Culture, and Aggression by Yale University Press out of New Haven, Connecticut. And it's a wonderful study. I hope someone in more recent years has worked or will work in the future on replicating this study, and maybe even developing these variables even more specific to particular conditions in communities. So, but it gives you a really nice overview, and I think that's very helpful and important. And again, I really want you to think about how it could be used. That's the main thing. Thank you. Hello? Oh, Dr. Winton here. Oh yes, yeah, some policy making issues. Sure. Okay.